Good evening and welcome to the 2D podcast. It's a double barrel night of podcasts because of travel that's going on with everybody. So we certainly appreciate everybody jumping on via the stream. If you catch us via the podcast, we appreciate that. Thank you very much. We normally would be rolling on a Thursday at about 9 p.m. Central. Instead, it is Tuesday, a little bit after 6 p.m. Central because of, like I said, travel time. Our other podcast, Red Golden Bolt, coming up here in a little bit as well. So make plans to join us for that as well. We'll do that back to back. So we'll have a couple of podcasts tonight, but we start tonight with Too Deep, a football podcast with us as always from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Jeff Chadiha, very excited about sitting in the press box during a Packers-Chiefs third preseason game. That should be exciting. Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus, PFF.com, where you can find his great work. Very excited about going where I'm going, just coming later, but going to be in Vegas as well. So I got some business to handle out there. So he's on the move as well. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. And thank you for joining us. We've got a lot to get to tonight here on the podcast as Tom Brady is back, boys. We'll talk about it. Does he recognize any of his offensive linemen? Because they're dropping like flies. Still difference with the receivers. No Gronk. Injuries in the receiving core they're still trying to get over. We'll talk about the expectations for the Packers wide receivers. How the Browns do at the quarterback position. That continues to be an absolute soap opera. Jimmy G's still a Niner. Will he be there for life? Find out tonight here on the 2D podcast. Chargers are already banged up. Eric, I think, said that last week. I think it was like a wizard and like willed it into, the Chargers will be hurt. That's already underway. And we'll talk about the second-year quarterbacks, get our thoughts on who we think is going to be the best. But, Jeff, let's start with Tom Brady back. He is back in camp. He's got injuries. We've got all kinds of stories now about him, having gone to the Raiders when last he left. Like, a lot's going on. They can sit there. Todd Bowles could sit there and act like, listen, I said he'd be back soon. Yeah, he's back soon, but a lot has happened in that soon. What's your reaction to Tom Brady being in camp, and what do we expect moving forward?
Let's not forget the whole tampering Miami Dolphins on the boat with Stephen Ross and possibly owning a team.
Yeah, that's
dynamic that was in play as well. Look, I think the one thing we can all agree on with Tom Brady is that he's going to be ready to play football. That no matter what's happening around him, he's able to push out the distractions, go back to Deflategate, go back to him tearing his ACL, whatever, in the 2008 season. All these things never seem to stop him from playing at a high level. So I don't worry about him, but I do worry about the Bucs now. I just can't imagine having this many offensive line problems when you have a 45-year-old quarterback, no matter how great he is, and not being concerned about it. And you look at what he's had in front of him for the last couple of years, that was a pretty underrated part of that team's success. And he knew who was blocking for him. They were very solid. They were very dependable. Ali Marpet's retired. Ryan Jensen has got a knee injury. Aaron Stinney just went down. Shaq Mason comes in from the Patriots. He's a new face there. So it's just that many faces on an offensive line where the one thing that is Tom Brady's kryptonite is the fact that he does not like being rushed from the interior. It doesn't bode well. And so if I'm sitting there, the New Orleans Saints, if I'm sitting there, the Green Bay Packers, the Los Angeles Rams, all these teams have great pass rushes. All these teams potentially can give the Buccaneers a lot of problems, either during the regular season or in the postseason.
When he started going down that list, Eric, I thought Jeff was going to give us the whole NFC South, and I was like, is he actually going to say
no? No. I can't go that. I'm drinking, but I'm not that drunk. I'm not at the Eric Eager threshold of being drunk where it's just like I'm saying Deacon Jones is going to be taking down Tom Brady this year. No, I'm not going that far.
All right. Brady's back. What does it mean? Can he actually pull this off? Is that something he can actually do, and miss this time with all these injuries and still play at a high level? Or is this a Brett Favre ending waiting to happen?
That was the name that came up for me, right? So we saw it with Favre. I mean, Favre was the classic, and I know we're so desensitive. We're so sensitive now, right? With media the way it is. I mean, guys used to sit out training camp all the time, right? Like back in the 80s, pre-free agency, you used to have because guys weren't free to move around. They would be without a contract, but no ability to go to a different team, right? So then they would sit out training camp, and then they'd come in week, right before the start of week 1, and then they'd play. You'd have some guys hold out for a year, and so, but the modern example we have, which really isn't that modern, is Brett Favre, right? Where he wants out of he wants out of Green Bay, he wants to play in Minnesota. The Packers trade him to the Jets, make him play for the Jets for a year because of the poison pill that they put in the contract. He retires. I remember like 6 or 7 times he says, "I'm not coming to play. I'm not coming back to play. I'm not coming back to play. I'm not coming back to play." And then funny, I'm living in Lincoln at the time. It's Chiefs Vikings on local TV, and all of a sudden Brett Favre comes running out of the freaking huddle. Oh, funny, it's because they're not in Mankato anymore. The guy didn't want to go to training camp, right? And then he has an amazing season. They're inspired, whatever. They lose in the NFC title game, and he gets really banged up. They come back the next year, and he's not back, right? And they go through I remember my friend Sage Rosenfels threw for like 350 yards in a preseason game against the Rams in his stead. And they have to send, I think it's like Ben Lieber, Ryan Longwell, and Steve Hutchinson down to Hattiesburg to drag him back to Minnesota. He comes back again. Funny, the first day that they're back in Winter Park and not in Mankato, and it's a freaking disaster. That team goes 6-10. He throws like 10 touchdowns, 20 picks, and it's just a nightmare. Brady, of course, got the ring with Tampa, had another really good year last year. To me, it's not the question of, is Brady going to be healthy? Is Brady going to play? It's if Brady's going to be inspired enough to actually lead this team. The issue, I think, with what Jeff is saying is there aren't that many NFC teams that are going to slide in and actually be compete with them. So I think Tampa Bay is going to be fine from the perspective of they're going to be a Super Bowl contender because all they have to do is really win 10 games, get into the tournament, much like they did in 2020. And I think if you look at the NFC, there are only 3 or 4 good teams besides Tampa Bay. So they could probably sleepwalk. If I'm betting, though, I'm betting some things like Tampa under season win total 11.5. I'm betting Dennis Allen Coach of the Year because I think if the Saints do win that division, Dennis Allen's the Coach of the Year for the NFL, right? Because we all think Peyton's going to be a big loss, et cetera, et cetera. So all this is to say, long-winded, I think the Bucs are fine from the perspective of, are they going to be a Super Bowl contender? But I do think it's going to be shy of 14-3. This team's a house. Brady's the MVP, blah, 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 because I think there's some question marks as to whether he's going to be motivated to go through 17 weeks of regular season play and then also, probably not getting the bye because there aren't byes anymore.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm on the under as well with the Bucs. I mean, at some point, it's just too much for one guy to handle, and at some point, you're old, right? I listen. I get it. I figure if I just keep calling him old, at some point, maybe it's at age 70, it'll happen. Right. But at some point, you have to back up the bus. And when Godwin's down, Evans has been great, but he's starting to be the last couple of years, every year he's on the injury report. If you're a fantasy nerd, you're sitting there looking to see if Mike Evans is going to be in there playing. He loses Gronk. He's losing the interior offensive line. The defense isn't getting any younger. I think, the Bucs could crash harder than people think. And I know you went through the detailed history of Brett Favre at the end, but at the end it was just too much, and I think that's where we are with the Bucs, and maybe they do get in the playoffs, but it's with a whimper, right? It's not with a roar and able to come get something done. I just think that in all the distractions, doesn't it have to be a problem? We've seen him overcome things. We saw him overcome the suspension in Deflategate, but. So yes, guys can come back and play, and he's going to play, but it has to affect him some, doesn't it? He can't just be like he never was gone.
Yeah, well, look, I feel like just having covered pro football for 2.5 decades, quarterbacks of Tom Brady's stature, like great boxers, they have to be knocked out. They have to really feel like they can't do it at the same level anymore, that their bodies have taken such a beating. You saw it with Brett Favre. You saw it with Peyton Manning. You saw it with Troy Aikman and Joe Montana. I was at the game when Steve Young got knocked unconscious by Aeneas Williams. It was a scary sight. And Tom Brady really hasn't had that kind of punishment. But the point I'm making about this offensive line, that's the kind of punishment he might see this year. It might get to a point where he is taking so much abuse that he's not used to that he might have to say, like, this is not for me anymore. And I totally understand why he's still playing, because it is such a drug. And when you are at this level, I always say, something Steve Young told me a long time ago, it's like when you play quarterback and you get to be the age that Tom Brady is, you've seen so much, you know so much, and you can process so much so fast. It's like the Matrix. You can just see things before they even happen. But the problem is your body can't keep up. And Tom Brady hasn't had to face that with the TB12 and all the stuff he's been taking, the avocado toast. He certainly feels like I can defy father time. And this may be the year when he finds out that nobody can do that.
Yeah, I mean, look at Jeff. Your point about these guys needing to be knocked out is a really good one, right? Like you look at the all-time leading passers in the NFL. Peyton Manning, his final year. Now I know he won a Super Bowl, but he was benched for Brock Osweiler. Had that fake, what does Petro call them, phantom IR type of injuries, and he had 9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. 6.8 yards a pass attempt his last year. Drew Brees went from, in 2019, a 74% completion percentage to a 70% completion percentage. 7.5 yards per pass attempt was Brees' worst in any year, tied for his worst in any year since 2010. When you look at Big Ben, Brett Favre had the 10 touchdowns, 19 interceptions this last year. Dan Marino lost to his last game to the Jacksonville Jaguars 62-7, but his last year in 1999, 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, 6.6 yards per pass attempt. I'm trying to look at even like Elway went out on top. That's a good one to sort of think about. Warren Moon was a backup in Kansas City for a couple of years,
and it was rough. It was rough. He had to go into a game, and it was rough looking.
Yeah, he started that one game, I remember, and it was dreadful. Drew Bledsoe got benched for Tony Romo.
Elway only played 15 years, right? Elway only played 15.
Yeah, and Elway, you're right. Elway's 11th all time, but yeah, you're right. And so, for most of these guys, you have to be told, right, to leave, and the universe, and so far, like Tom Brady was, in my opinion, and in the numbers, like the MVP of the league last year. That was a team that won 12 games with him throwing the ball 70%. Like they had 70% of their plays were passes. He was a volume guy and an efficiency guy, and a winner last year. And it's like I said, like it's tough. And maybe this is just his way. Like I know, sometimes. Maybe this is his way of just acting out and not training as hard and just like kind of being part of the people that tell him he has to give it up by not being as good on purpose. I don't know. Like there's an issue here where I think he's just not going to go out on top. Like he has to somehow, and maybe this is the year where it's just not going to be the case for him.
Yeah. I just, at some point he has to get hurt too, right? Like the ligaments, the tendons, they don't bend like they used to. They don't stretch like they used to. At some point, one of these hits, and when you take away the guys in front of him, you think one of those hits are going to catch up to him. Aaron Rodgers, feeling better about the young receivers? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe the firestorm came back at him and he realized, okay, I got to back off. But Alan Lazard is going to be his number one wideout. What's left of Randall Cobb? Whatever Sammy Watkins sees himself as right now. Like,
a lizard?
Yeah, a solar lizard, I believe is what he said when he was his final year in Kansas City. Is that really the weaponry? And then Christian Watson, who's had some drops, quite a few of them. Is that enough for Aaron Rodgers to, the Packers have built the defense. We've talked about that. We know that they've invested well there, but offense wins in the NFL. Does he have enough weaponry? Or does it not even matter that you can put anybody out there with a top shelf quarterback and they're going to have success, Jeff?
Oh, I think it matters. I think it matters more than Aaron Rodgers would admit. Look, we all know, like you said, the defense is going to be lights out, that he's going to have two good running backs and a quality offensive line. But it's quarterbacks are creatures of habit, and they like guys who are reliable and consistent. And between the old guard you just mentioned and the new guard that's coming up, I'm curious to see where he's going to find his comfort level. And I know back in the day he was throwing a guy like Geronimo Allison and Equiminius St. Brown and people like that. I always say Robert Tonyan was like the village people more than it was a receiving core. He made it work, but it was just I don't know how much magic you can keep creating. And let's be real about it. I love Aaron as a player, but the last couple NFC Championship games he's played, he hasn't delivered at a high level. So the need to have playmakers around him is very much a part of his storyline now. And if you have a guy dropping a pass, if you have a guy who not running the right depth on a route in a big playoff game, I could easily see them having the same problems they had. They lost that last playoff game to the Niners to a block punt. They couldn't move the football with the greatest receiver in the league playing for them. And so I just don't know. I trust them to dominate the NFC North. I trust them to be a playoff team. What I don't trust is for them to be in the postseason in a critical moment and to be able to rely on the people they have around him to get this team over the hump. And that's what it's all about now. I mean, they have to win a championship and stop going to championship games and talking about, it's been a great year.
Is the reality, Eric, that they're going to be this is the Terrell Davis years of John Elway, if we're going to harken back to past quarterbacks, that maybe not because Aaron Rodgers needs someone to do it for him. The plan is to pound the rock and play defense, that the NFL is going more and more passing. And so they're going to zig when everybody else is zagging. And with A.J. Dillon and they drafted another running back this year, didn't they? We see them, like I said, try to zig when everybody else zags, and it ends up being effective. And they're a lot more of a power running team.
That could be the case. I mean, I think, they get Robert Tonyan back, right? I actually, when I looked at the linebacker movement stuff using NGS, like there was no team in the NFL. Well, they were one of the worst teams in the NFL in terms of other teams' linebackers flowing on them. They were sort of the opposite of the Chiefs. So I don't know if that was predictability or what it was, because like the other LaFleur, the one in the with the Jets, had a similar thing. So maybe it's just that offense, the way that they run it. But they really missed Tonyan in terms of like the play action kind of like stuff over the middle. That I think that they'll maybe deploy this year more, which I think will help them. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think it's Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are going to be their stars on offense. And that's hard because, I mean, in the history of the NFL, we've had so many instances where somebody's like, oh my God, they're going to play Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb in the same backfield. It like never happens. Like it never happens. So like I get worried when these teams are like, oh, we got two great runners, we're going to play them, because one of them's a big running back, so you can play fullback. It's like that's not how these things work, right? So I'm worried for them because, and then frankly, other than like Marshall Faulk, splitting a running back out in the pass pattern is like bad, right? Because they're not good. If they were that good, they'd be wide receivers, right? So that's where I get worried for this team, because I think a lot of the cope that the Packers fans have is, depending upon Romeo Doubs, who I think has been really good. Like, and I think he's got an opportunity to be a good football player. Christian Watson, I think, is going to be too raw, I think, right away to play well. Cobb and Lazard are, just whatever. So I think it's going to be tougher for them. The thing that they have that is going to maybe help them get through the first part of the season, their defense is pretty good, right? Like their defensive personnel is pretty solid. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a different way for them to win if they win that way.
Yeah. I think I think the quarterback's 85%. Do you have a math number for it? Like in your passing attack, you can count on the quarterback to be about 85% of it. Like, so, if you have anybody who can run and then catch most of them, you ought to be all right in the passing game.
Yeah, I think they're a team that if they make it, so they're differently constructed, right? If they make it to the 1 seed in the NFC or higher, I think that very survivorship will mean that they'll be better equipped to win in the playoffs, because I always thought that them being so top heavy at the receiver position was sort of like that baseball team that can win 115 games, but does like they're sort of a baseball team that can win over the course of 162, but can't win a series. I think they're sort of opposite. Like, I think if you have a really good wide receiver, you can beat the Detroits and the Minnesotas and the teams that kind of aren't great schemers, aren't healthy during the year. You can just beat them up with your best wide receiver over and over and over again. You can win 12, 13 games doing that. But when you get into the playoffs, you're playing defenses that are by and large healthy, by and large well schemed. And those teams can take away your offense if you're too one-dimensional. This is also a Chiefs rant by me. But if the Packers figure out a way to win 12 games with that receiving core, that means enough guys have stepped up and they are versatile enough, in my opinion, that when they get to the playoffs, they'll be diverse enough to win games they otherwise have struggled to win with Adams, even though Adams is much better than any of the receivers that they have on the roster.
If you're catching us via the podcast, we normally stream live, like we said, on a Thursday night, about 9 p.m. Central, coming to you live. And, when you do join us, you can comment in the chat room, like Eric, who said, is Eager broadcasting from the foreman's basement from that 70s show? Looks smoky. It's just the light.
Folks, this is just my ring light, guys.
Is that what it is?
It's a glare.
Yeah, that's better.
This is God telling you the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. All right.
I think that was E.T. coming through.
It is. You're going to have to figure. It does like.
I am going to have to figure this out. My wife was very nice. She moved me into this room. She painted the wall black. I don't think she realized what painting the wall black would do, but.
Yeah, the light works better if you put it in front of you, though.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in front of you.
I know, but my big issue is when I put it in front of me, then you get the rings in my glasses, which pisses me off more than maybe anybody else. Yeah, we will manage. As Michael Scott says, somehow we manage.
As long as you're comfortable, don't worry about our viewers and listeners. It's as long as you're comfortable. That's the key thing.
Right. What do you guys think of this Matt Patricia shirt right here?
That's strong. That's strong.
As my daughter says, I like sweatshirts that are also t-shirts.
Yeah, well, there you go. I guess I'll have to go start grabbing some old hoodies and making the move. Let's talk about a couple of years ago, the fact that the Cleveland Browns with Kevin Stefanski were maybe making just a couple of plays, making a couple of plays away from pulling an upset on a banged up Chiefs team, right? Patrick Mahomes had gone down in the playoffs. They were certainly the toast of the town. Baker Mayfield was their franchise quarterback moving forward. They had that answered, and everything was going right. Baker Mayfield will now start for the Carolina Panthers. And I'm not sure what you would say about how they handled the quarterback position. They knew they were going to lose Deshaun Watson for a while, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they're the only ones who didn't know that. How would you describe and I don't know, maybe even grade the job, Jeff, that the Browns did with this quarterback situation?
Disappointing. That'd be the word I would use.
God, that's
I'd give them a C. I feel like Deshaun Watson over time will be the quarterback that he was before all this stuff went down. He lost all these games to off-season issues, but off the field issues. But the way they handled Baker Mayfield and all this was really chaotic and dysfunctional. And Andrew Berry's a smart guy, a smart GM. And whatever you think about Jimmy and Dee Haslam as owners, Andrew Berry is a very bright dude, Ivy League educated. And just the way that they just misplayed the Baker situation, they could have probably gotten more from him earlier. I think they kind of stumbled their way through the whole Deshaun Watson process of signing him. And then to be stuck in a situation where you knew they were going to have to unload Baker Mayfield and pay part of his salary. They could have been done with this a long time ago. Probably gotten some draft picks out of it, gotten a better deal from Carolina. Could have done a number of things that had it play out well. And then to be stuck here with him coming back into town, Jacoby Brissett starting for you, the way they've mismanaged a lot of the press conferences. We talked about that last week. It's just all of it's just bad. And it's probably fitting that they're going to have Baker Mayfield showing up in week 1. I think they should beat the Carolina Panthers, but the fact that they're going to be paying both starting quarterbacks in that game is not a great optic in any way.
Yeah,
and they're going to be paying the other quarterback more than the one that they're starting, which is hilarious.
That's right.
Like very Cleveland Browns, if I've ever seen it. This is,
Is it more about, let me ask you this, Eric, is it more about Stefanski or more about the organization? How they botched this.
So, and I'm going to give Andrew Berry a break too. I'm going to give Stefanski and Berry a break. These are things that, and I've actually had this conversation with a lot of friends who, about a different situation, like a far less egregious situation, but one of those where if we were in this position, would we stand up to ownership? Because I think that's really it, right? Like, you're Andrew Berry, you've worked so hard to get to where you are, right? We talked about race on the last episode. Like, you're also one of very few black GMs in the NFL. There are still like many remnants of racism and things like that, especially at the top in NFL. I'd like to think that if I was in his shoes, I would say, hey, no, we're not doing this. This is ridiculous. I quit, blah, blah, blah. But you're talking about, the jump from like assistant GM, let's say making $350,000 a year, right? Maybe $500,000 to what a general manager makes, per season. You're talking about 6 times as much, if not more. You're talking about life-changing money. So Stefanski, and Stefanski's been a long time assistant in this league, getting a head coaching job. The owners are all chummy. Like, we call out the Haslams for being what they are, but this is also so. I think, unfortunately for both men, I think both of them were, in this situation, forced to do a lot of these things by ownership, including getting rid of Baker Mayfield too quickly.
Okay, so you put it then.
I put it on ownership. I put it like the whole thing of like, we want an adult as quarterback is a fairly like ownership level thing, right? And so, it's, in my opinion, these decisions about quarterbacks, and I look at Minnesota this way. I look at Detroit this way. I look at a lot of different places where they're like, why did they make the choice to pick the quarterback that they did? And I think we're looking too low when we look at general manager and head coach. I think that these decisions are made by, like, why did Baker Mayfield sit last? Why did he sit last year? Why didn't he, there are numbers of reasons why. And like, from all accounts, the people I know in Minnesota, the people I know, Kevin Stefanski's a great guy. Like, he's not going to be one of these people who's like, you're going to play, damn it. Like, he's not the coach from freaking Varsity Blues. He's like a decent human being. And I think all indications were that Andrew Berry that way. Again, I think it's ownership that is really the issue in Cleveland. And it was that way with Watson. And it's this way with Baker and how they handled the whole Baker situation.
Jeff, let's talk about the 49ers. Jimmy G is still a Niner, and I know he's hurt. I mean, Dak Prescott got $140 million being more hurt than Jimmy G is right now. So, like, I'm not really buying that one anymore. Is the reality that there's just no interest in Jimmy? I'm not going to say that the injury doesn't matter at all. In Dallas, there was a leap of faith that was going on there. But, don't we have to look at this and say that this is just that there is no interest in Jimmy Garoppolo, or the 49ers are wanting some king's ransom for the guy?
I'm sure there's been interest. I mean, I know that John Lynch, going back to the combine, said they were getting offers, but much like Cleveland, the question is, what can they get for him? And when you look at what quarterbacks have been getting on the trade market, the idea of getting a first-round pick, at least one, if not two, or maybe three, if you could swing it, is very attractive. But the problem is they're running out of time here. This is the last year of his deal. And they're at a place right now that Baker Mayfield got with the Browns where it's just like, people know you have to get rid of him. People know you have a quarterback. So why is somebody going to come and give you what you want? At this stage, I'm thinking that, if he's not traded by midseason, I don't know what they do, because it's really affecting their ability to go out and sign some of the other players they need to go out and sign. They got Deebo Samuel done, but Nick Bosa is sitting out there. He's going to get a huge extension. And look, part of me feels like the best option for him, if you're the 49ers, is that Tua stinks it up in Miami, start of the season. Mike McDaniel starts getting desperate, and they start saying, you know what, this would be a good quarterback to have down here until we can find somebody else to play. And I know Bridgewater's down there and all that, but it's just, I feel like Garoppolo knows the offense, knows it well.
Wouldn't that have already happened, though? I mean, wouldn't that have already happened?
Possible, but people aren't desperate enough to do that. I think you have to have somebody who's desperate enough to make that move to give the Niners something that they would want. Now, Miami doesn't have a first-round pick to offer this year because of their own issues. But you look around the NFL, who else is in a position right now to go out and say, I want to go trade for Jimmy Garoppolo because I need him? You can say the Browns, but he's not going someplace where he's only going to be around for 11 games and not have a job. It has to be someplace where we can have some kind of a future.
I like the McDaniel thing, right? Like a guy who knows him. Okay, hey, listen, this isn't our long-term plan, but we've got to stay the course. And if you play that out, if you say, okay, well, he should want him. One, does that mean that McDaniel's sold on to him? That maybe the narrative is wrong, that he's like, no, I can win with this guy. This guy's better than what I can get. Or does it mean that ownership is sold on Tua and he's come into a place and he can't even go get the quarterback he wants? A is the better answer if you're a Dolphins fan, right? Is that he believes in Tua, and Tua's going to come out and play well. And he's like, listen, we're not giving up draft picks. We give up draft picks for weapons for this guy. We're going to hold our draft picks. Jimmy Garoppolo's got to be cut. Like, that's what I think. I think there are no offers. I think John Lynch is GM speaking it, and there's no offers, or at least nothing appreciable. And I don't understand why the 49ers haven't said all along, listen, it's his time. We're going to give the ball to Trey Lance. Well, why would we get rid of a perfectly good quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo? Jimmy Garoppolo seems to be a nice guy. He seems to get along with everyone. He doesn't seem to be the kind that's going to throw a fit. Why couldn't they have just played this differently and said, we're going to keep them both and had that security blanket? Or is it that in today's NFL, one pick and everybody's booing the young guy and you crush the confidence of Lance? You literally have to burn the boats behind the young guy to really give him a shot to win. Is that what this is, Jeff?
Well, look, you go back. I'm old enough to remember how the Chargers handled Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers, and they kept Phillip Rivers on the bench for a couple of years because Drew Brees was playing at a high enough level to be comfortable with him as a starter. And Marty Schottenheimer, like Drew Brees, I remember how long Aaron Rodgers sat in Green Bay. It was 3 years before he got off the bench, and that obviously helped him become a great quarterback, but nobody was complaining because Brett Favre was playing at a high level. I do agree with you that, look, if Jimmy G doesn't hurt his shoulder and have shoulder surgery, he's probably already traded. We're not having this conversation. It's a done deal. But the minute it became clear they wanted to start Trey Lance, they should have found some way to deal him and move him forward, knowing that the opportunity to deal him was going to get worse the longer it played out. I just think Challenge is a smart guy too, but they overplayed their hand here. The only real option now that makes sense is the most predictable option is that he plays out his contract, he goes into free agency, and he finds a new home, and they get some kind of compensation pick.
Eric, is the inevitable that they're going to have to cut him? And if that's what they end up doing, they should have done that a long time ago and gotten the distraction out of the way. How's it play out?
I think the distraction maybe is a little overblown. Like, I think everybody in that building is an adult and knows what's happening, right? Like, I think I don't know. Like, we come back to Kansas City, right? When Alex Smith was the quarterback and Patrick Mahomes was behind him, there wasn't any like controversy here, was there? Like, I don't like, there was maybe a few, I don't know, gadflies calling in to radio shows telling them to start Patrick Mahomes, but like, I think everybody in the locker room was kind of like, yeah, there's a limited quarterback here, there's a young guy there, we got to transition from and to their credit, they traded Alex Smith like in January, so that was the thing. But I think everybody knows what's going on here, right? Like, to me, that team already dealt with Deebo Samuel kind of like holding in is what it's called now, and like his contract thing. I don't think Jimmy G's a distraction. I agree with what Jet, like, they couldn't trade him for a while because he was hurt, and then they couldn't find a suitor. And I just think they're respecting. I honestly think from the perspective of other 49ers players, I think other 49ers players probably look at it like, hey, they're treating Jimmy G right in this way, right? I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't see anybody being called. It's just bad luck. Like, he got hurt and they couldn't trade him. And then once everything happened, they played musical chairs and Jimmy G was the one standing up at the end, right?
Yes and no. I mean, like I said, the injury didn't keep Dak Prescott from getting signed. Like, I don't know why.
But the Cowboys didn't have
it didn't keep Drew Brees from signing.
That's the example right there. Drew Brees.
But Drew Brees. But no, because Drew Brees was an unrestricted free agent. Like the Drew Brees. But I mean,
they didn't sit around and wait till he could throw. They gave him a real contract. It wasn't some 1 year prove it deal.
Right, but the Niners could not cut Jimmy G when he was injured, right? They could give him like an injury settlement or something like that, but it was probably not worth it for either party to do it. And then the Niners were holding out that they could get something for him. Like, I don't think it's a distraction. I think every adult in that room understand what's happening.
Well, and to Jeff's notes that he had when we were settling on what we were going to talk about today, he pointed out, Garoppolo's not working out with them. So when is he going to magically prove he's healthy? Like it's not easy to go on the field and get reps for the Niners.
Well, I think he's healthy now, but I don't think that there's the impetus to acquire him. The Jets probably were the team that were going to acquire him, but it came to be that Zach Wilson wasn't out for the season, so then they went with Flacco. Like, I legitimately think that you think about the history of the NFL. It was Bridgewater with Minnesota. It was Tannehill got hurt in the preseason. They went with Cutler. St. Louis had, with Bradford got injured in the preseason, and they, these things happen all the time. I think they're just waiting for that, because right now they're getting nothing for him, and the opportunity, like the money, like there was never a good time for that money to be useful for them, right? Because by the time he was healthy, free agency was over, and now that money's no good. They're not going to be able to use those millions of dollars to go acquire a real player, maybe Odell, but the receiving core is fine. So they're just waiting until something happens now, which I think is probably rational, especially considering it is not a quarterback controversy. They have moved on from him, and that's kind of. I mean, we get this with Jimmy G. Jimmy G's not a great quarterback, but Jimmy G's good enough where if you built a roster around Zach Wilson, and Zach Wilson tears his ACL, which is a very real possibility, he can go in there and salvage the season and make sure you can evaluate things. Yeah. I think they're waiting for that right now, and it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it has to be a team that is in a situation where they feel like they can win now with a competent quarterback. It's not going to be some team that just loses to Zach Wilson and just, all right, let's throw this guy in here. It's going to have to be some play, like you said, like Minnesota, like Miami back in the day, that is just so desperate to keep in the playoff hunt that this makes sense.
Darby Darkness said he's only played 46 of 81 possible regular season games. Comparing him to a freak one-off injury for Breeze or Dak doesn't translate. And I think there's a fair point to it. I think that's part of it. It's not just this injury, it's all the injuries. Why would you go trade for
probably not that good, guys, right? Like, I mean,
so cut him. No one's giving you anything. Cut him and
no, but like the
but then he comes back with the 33 and 14 as a starter. Which is true too.
The Vikings just traded a 7th round pick and $1.5 million for Nick Mullins, based upon Nick Mullins playing for Kyle Shanahan. The Kyle Shanahan beer goggles work.
Listen, you root for the Chiefs. I root for and cover the Chiefs. Jeff is based out of Kansas City. They don't even mention that Andy Reid, showing a guy in the preseason and trading him for a second and that crap don't even fly in Kansas City. And Andy Reid's the guy that did it 2 or 3 or 4 times. Like those Rob Johnson deals don't appear to be made anymore. Okay. So I'm not, I think.
Well, because it's like Rob, there is, and I don't want to talk about broad NFL. There is zero incentive in the current NFL to sign Jake Delhomme or to trade a 5th for Jake Delhomme to support Tony Romo. There is, because you can just be asked for a year and pick a guy at 3 in most years, and he's cheap and he's probably got big upside. You're right. I mean, the Jimmy G thing, Jimmy G is never going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's never going to be somebody's first choice to be a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. Neither is Baker Mayfield. None of these guys that don't have these like $45 million deals or aren't rookie deal contract guys, those guys will never be a team's first choice anymore. They are just going to be oh crap, our quarterback got hurt. We put all this money into this team. We're taking him because he can get the thing get the thing back on the tracks. And Jimmy G specifically, I think half the league is just like, well, yeah, that's fine. But he's played for two of the best coaches in the NFL. He's actually cheeks, but we're going to put him up there. And
But what do you think they should get for him? Like, to me, it's like, and it's like Carson Wentz deal and the Matthew Stafford. There's such a variety of deals out there now for quarterbacks who didn't work out, who won Super Bowls. That's what makes it hard. It's just like, I can understand they're thinking, hey, we get a nice haul for this guy, but the reality of it is they're not in a situation to get that. So what does get it done?
I think it's like a 5th round pick, especially if it comes with his salary, right? Like
I think it's like a 5th round pick and some conditional pick. And but I think, again, what they want and what is available are two entirely different.
But desperation can cause the Vikings traded a 1st round pick for Sam Bradford, but that was out of desperation. Sam Bradford does not garner a 1st round pick in an off season, right? When you have other choices
right now. But who's desperate right now?
That's what I'm saying. They're like, they believe that there is a better than average chance that somebody eventually will be desperate. To Jeff's point, what if Tua sucks, and what if Bridgewater? They don't think Bridgewater's good.
I think there's people that are desperate. Like I think there are teams that would be like, oh, we'll take him. I think it's a combination of maybe there aren't teams that are like, oh my God, here we go. But Sam Bradford carried a 1-1 pedigree, and that's not Jimmy Garoppolo. So, and I think also the fact that the Patriots haven't sniffed around like they were the ones that supposedly loved him so much. I think that's a note. And I think you are incredibly passionate about Jimmy Garoppolo, Eric, and pushing this thing for being the guy who gave us a hard out on the podcast tonight. I think that is amazing. Your passion for the Jimmy Garoppolo topic.
I give everything to this show every time. Who am I? I'm the George Karlaftis of this show.
Okay.
The whole wire to wire high motor.
All right. The Chargers, J.C. Jackson's going to be out with ankle surgery. They spent a lot of money to get him away from New England, improve their defense, Jeff. Is this just the beginning of the usual Charger injury parade? Is there any reason or have they finally added such depth that that's not going to be what slows them down? They can survive this. They'll be better when he gets back. And in the meantime, they're still a very dangerous team.
Well, they're still dangerous, but this is not a good look. Like, we all know that where there's one with this team, there's many more to come. It's only a matter of time before people start falling. And this is, for me, it's scary just because J.C. Jackson is, I think, more important to them than even Khalil Mack is. I think he is a huge linchpin of what they want to do defensively, how they want to play. He unleashes Derwin James in a lot of ways. And he's a great corner. He's a great cover corner. Takes the ball away, picks it off. He's had 15, 16 interceptions over the last couple of years. And so I get that it's only 2 to 4 weeks. It's kind of a bizarre explanation of a condition he had going back to childhood that he wanted to get fixed right now with 2 weeks to go before the season begins. You could have done this back in March or April after you sign your deal. But yeah, I think it's a little bit scary for me if I'm a Chargers fan because this team has great expectations. They want to improve themselves defensively, and he's a big part of what they can be as far as being an AFC West Championship caliber team.
And aren't they a little, strikingly thin at corner, right? Like for being a team, like do you like if they have to go?
Well, they have Asante Samuel still. They have Mike Davis is still there,
and Bryce Callahan when he's healthy is a good slot corner. I mean, it's just the Chargers, right? And like my big thing with the Chargers is like all of this stuff. Like I watch, and there are people I respect, but like Nate Tice and the other guy on his show, Robert Mays, they have them 3rd in the power rankings. Both of them do. It's like Bills, Chiefs, freaking Chargers, right? And it's like, did we not learn anything from the last X amount of years about this team? The thing I worry about with the Chargers, by the way, is we've gotten great seasons out of Justin Herbert for 2 years in a row. And we're all from Kansas, or we're all do stuff in Kansas City, right? What have we learned about Mahomes?
What?
When you roast everybody your first couple years,
okay,
what happens? The league engineers itself to stop you, right?
Okay.
I'm worried if I'm a Chargers fan by the fact that you've gotten historic start from your quarterback and have nothing to show for it. Like, I think the biggest leak for the Los Angeles Chargers is the fact that if Herbert goes from a 9 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10, you're not anywhere close to as good as you think you are. And we've seen Patrick Mahomes go from a 10 to an 8 over 4 years. And we've seen the strain it's put on this franchise, and the Chiefs franchise is much better run than the Chargers. Right? So I worry about the Chargers because the people that want them to be great are holding all the great things fixed. Herbert, Mike Williams, who, by the way, stayed healthy last year when he hasn't stayed healthy a lot in his career. Keenan Allen, the offensive line, Khalil Mack. Do we know Khalil Mack's good anymore? Right? Bosa healthy, Derwin James big contract. He should stay healthy. And we've seen the first crack, right? And I wonder what are the other cracks for that team.
I don't think anybody in LA is sweating what Justin Herbert is. I'm going to be honest, like that's
and I think and folks, this is why the Chargers fans never see it coming. Right? This is why the media
for the demise of Justin Herbert. Huh?
Every single year, and we're guilty of it at PFF.com. Every single year, some schmuck for us writes, "Oh, this is the Chargers' year." I never see it coming. To your point, Petro, they don't see.
Listen. I was shocked by this. I had to look at this and be like, "Is this right?" He threw for 5,000 yards.
I said the same thing.
I mean, like
5,000 yards in history.
When I was looking at it, I'm like, and that's been done more. I guess
It's been done like 5 times.
No, it's actually now been done 14 times.
14?
Yeah. 14 times. Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Brady did it last year.
Okay.
Brady had the third highest.
So he's like the fifth guy to do it. He's like the fifth guy, right?
Yeah. So let's see, Manning, Brees,
season though, right?
Brady, Big Ben, Winston, Mahomes, Marino, Stafford, and Herbert. He's the 9th.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but it's like. It was
quiet.
Love that I'm gonna let you define this, Eric. Are you saying Herbert's gonna back up the bus this year? That it's like I get like, are we talking about so Patrick Mahomes throws for 4,500 yards and what did he have? 35 touchdowns, I think, and 13. You talking about that? Okay, yes. I mean, I think there's the regression back. You don't just more and more. I remember Mahomes' first year with 50 touchdowns. There were people calling my radio show saying, well, he'll average 60, 65 for his career. It's like, no, this was a special season. But like, what are you saying Herbert is going to do? What are you saying that we're going to look at him?
I'm saying I
bring up Marino and how much after his first couple of seasons, he never came close to that. And you like bristle at that and get pissed at me.
I think that there were parts of Marino's game that were amazing that were later on, which was like the fact that he took no sacks for like 19 straight games and stuff. But the touchdown interceptions and the yards per attempt all went down. I'm not saying that Herbert's not going to be Herbert's not a good quarterback. The same way that I don't think Mahomes all of a sudden sucks because his statistics are worse than they were when he started. What I'm saying is everybody looks at Herbert's production, which has been fantastic through 2 years, and everybody looks at that and says that's a fixed thing. That's going to happen no matter what. So if all we have to do is we go and get a run defense, right? We've seen it. Like this is every loser team's fan base is this way about everything. As long as the great things we have stay fixed and we plug the holes of the bad things that were the reason we missed the playoff for the 8th straight year, then we're going to be good. And the problem I have is that logic is inherently flawed. Like if you patch all the holes on that Chargers team, I'm skeptical that this Chargers franchise can do that. And B, what happens if Herbert is 10% worse?
Jeff, your reaction?
Well, it sounds like he's saying that Herbert's going to be worse, right? That's what it feels.
I think
like.
the production
the
won't
potential
be
of it. But you're saying that's like 4,800 yards and 35 touchdowns, or is it like 3,000 yards and 17? How much worse are we talking here?
So last year, Patrick Mahomes, and I bring it back to Mahomes because it's like the one we have the best intuition about. Patrick Mahomes last season.
Can I just interject one thing? I was the president of the I don't think Herbert's going to be that good when he was drafted club, but even I have relented, right? Even
I'm not saying he's not good.
Even I have been like, okay, I missed it on that one. He's
Patrick Mahomes.
Good.
Patrick Mahomes in 2020 averaged 8.1 yards per pass attempt. In 2021, he averaged 7.4 yards per pass attempt. In 2020, he threw 6 interceptions. In 2021, he threw 13. All of us look at Patrick Mahomes and still think he's a great quarterback. But my question becomes, if Herbert has a similar decline in efficiency and luck, right? And Herbert actually got unlucky on interceptions last year. But if he has a similar decline in efficiency, what if Mike Williams gets hurt? Mike Williams is not Jim Marshall. Okay, like he's like, you know, what if
you talking about Jim Marshall, the Vikings defensive end?
Isn't Jim Marshall the one that played all the games in a row?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so he had the record for the most games.
Are you saying Justin Herbert's going to run the wrong way for a touchdown?
That's like,
is that because that's what Jim Marshall did? Is that where you're going with this?
That's what I'm thinking.
I'm saying
he's not a Ahmad Rashad.
People that think the Chargers are going to be
the Minnesota area.
People who think the Chargers are going to be the third best team in the NFL are making assumptions that I do not think will hold. That's all I'm saying.
And listen, I can come up with scenarios. By the way, we're going to drop the last one because we're out of time, and I want to give it more time. I want to leave at that one. That was my favorite one. I'll teach us to leave the best one for last, but I get it, and I think, you know, listen, if you're insane enough as we are to dedicate the kind of time we do to these things, obviously we'll argue all the minutia, right, to the nth degree. I think we're mostly on the same page, and I think you're saying there'll be a statistical drop, as you pointed out, a statistical drop in Patrick Mahomes. But does anybody think Patrick Mahomes is a worse quarterback today than he was 3 or 4 years ago? Because I don't. I think he's still really good. To your point, defenses catch up, right? And they've caught up. I think at some point offenses will move forward. And if Patrick Mahomes has got one of the coaches that moves forward, which there's a history that he's with a guy, you're going to see another, you know, he might be the guy that goes for 6,000 yards in 17 games. You know,
you got to be fair here. You got to put Jonathan's comment up here. Jonathan summarizes my take perfectly. Thank you, Jonathan.
I see. Jonathan says, I love how you always just thank people and you forget about the podcast part and don't read what it says. I see what Eric is saying. Mahomes had a ring during his great start. It's more likely that Herbert regresses slightly. And if he does, the Chargers will be much worse than they have been. But to your point, and again, I was just saying why we're having this argument. I don't understand because we're insane. But have the Chiefs regressed? Right?
Yes.
Like if Mahomes is, to what degree? They've been in the conference championship game for 4 years. And you're the one who talks about that they're Super Bowl. Don't you dare for 1 second try to tell me, well, they won the Super Bowl in 19. They haven't won the last 2 years. Because you're the president of they stole the Ravens.
They stole the Ravens Super Bowl. But 2020, like I'm even just comparing 2020 to 2021, right? His yards per attempt went down by 2/3 of a yard, and he had twice as many interceptions. And I look, the Chiefs, they made the conference title game last year, but the first 3 years of Mahomes' era, they did not lose a single game until the Super Bowl by more than one score that he started last year. They got blown out by Buffalo. They got blown out by Tennessee. They lost to the Ravens, who they had a hex over, and they lost to the Chargers. They blew second half leads to the Bengals twice. Double-digit second-half leads. This is not as good of a team, and it was because of Mahomes' regression. And I think that, again, the whole offseason was dedicated to reviving Mahomes, to our point, right? The whole offseason was dedicated to getting Mahomes' mojo back, right? Like that was –
So I guess the question is, do you think we've already seen the best Justin Herbert can do? Because that's what I would argue would be that he has never played with a roster like Mahomes had at his best. So maybe he can play better because he has better people around him.
That's a question for you, Eric.
I think, yeah, sure. But I also think that Chargers team is great.
You were looking at your phone, you jackass. He asked you, are you saying that we have seen the best of Justin Herbert already? That his best is already in the rearview mirror?
I'm saying that there's a legit chance that the first 2 years of Herbert there's a legit chance that those are two of his best years.
I love I'm a Chiefs fan, And if my fan hat were on here, I'd be gobbling up what you're saying. But you are like, you're just spieling.
If you said that stuff about Carson Wentz in 2018, people would have laughed you off the stage.
You're comparing Justin Herbert to Carson Wentz now?
I don't know. Carson Wentz won a Super Bowl.
No, he didn't.
That's right.
Carson
he got a ring. Yeah.
That's look, Carson Wentz in 2017 was 11-2 as a starter. 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, had the highest QBR in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, right?
I get your point.
He was 7-9 in his first year, much like Herbert was, and then he was he was an MVP candidate in year 2. And I'm not saying and none of us predicted it, right? None of us said, "Oh, this is the best we're going to see out of Wentz," but it happens, and I'm leaving open the possibility that that Herbert, who has been wonderful, none of us are going back in time and saying he sucked. I'm saying he has been wonderful, and there is a small chance that no one is baking in that he is going to regress a little bit.
I think lots of people would acknowledge that statistically he could and is likely to regress. And anyone who's looked at the 5,000-yard passers knows that other than Drew Brees, you don't tick him off year after year after year. By the way, Drew Brees didn't win squat when he was doing that as well. And so I think that's what the Chargers have done is like, okay, those are big numbers, but we got to be a better team. And they put a better team around him. This is fascinating to me. Your passion for this is otherworldly. But I'll let you have the last word, and then we got to break.
It's fired up tonight
because somebody's got to actually shut this down, and then I got stuff I got to do to start up our next one. But what is the Chargers' record this year? So tell me, like, when it's all said and done, all this, your Rolodex of numbers, and yes, a Carson Wentz. We didn't see the Carson Wentz, happening, but there's also lots of guys that have been good who kept being good. Okay, so yes, you found the outlier. But we end with this. Just give me a record for what the Chargers will be this year. You're adding all this up and saying the Chargers go what?
10-7.
Okay.
I don't think it's that much better.
Are you at by darkly?
They're not the third best team in the league.
That's the same time you said that. But coming out of your mouth is popped on the screen.
Everybody is afraid of this team like they are the second coming of this is Jimmy Johnson's
You know what you are? You're a Chiefs fan that they're not still just blowing the Chiefs all the time. And that's pissing you off. There's a new darling, and that's pissing you off. That's what I hear.
What have I said about Buffalo this offseason?
I've been very, very pro Buffalo.
Very complimentary of Buffalo. But unlike the Chargers, the Buffalo Bills have earned it. That is my whole thing. The Buffalo Bills have earned it. The Bengals have earned it. The Chargers have earned jack shit. They have not done, and I'm sorry. And I like Herbert, and I'm not sticking to my guns here. I think
you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
But I have.
You're on a hill. You're going down.
I have been in these analyst streets for years, trying to tell fans of loser franchises, of which the Chargers are, that you can't just say, "Hey, Eric, you're a dumbass. We corrected all of our problems and all of our good things stay the same," which never happens. That's my problem with the Chargers love, is that this is like you don't build teams this way.
Listen, the Chargers.
It's just the guy who loves the Detroit Lions like nobody's business this year. All over the line at the Chargers. Don't get anywhere close to those guys.
That's it. Don't get him going. We don't have time for Dan Campbell. We're going to take a break. We're done here on Too Deep. Thank you for joining us. We got another podcast coming up. If you're catching us on the stream, our Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, we're going to turn right around and do that as well. But for Too Deep, this is, I'm sad to say the end, because I wanted to hear Eric keep going and finding more outliers. But for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus, my name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Thank you for joining us here on the Too Deep podcast.